Most output-based questions in JavaScript interviews are asked on objects, and these are the type of questions which can confuse candidates the most if they don't have the proper knowledge of this topic. Because hey, everything in JavaScript is an object. So in this video, we will first understand what objects are and discuss some of the most frequently asked interview questions on objects and how you can tackle them in your JavaScript interviews. So first things first, what the hell are JavaScript objects? Let's try to Google it. And let's open the official MDN docs. And over here you can see an object is a collection of properties, and a property is an association between a name or a key and a value. A property's value can be a function in which the case property is known as a method. In other words, objects are used to store keyed collection of various data and more complex utilities. An object can be created by using curly brackets. So if I go down over here, you can see, here's an example. So over here I've opened VS Code with simple HTML, CSS and JavaScript files. So now I'm going to create an object over here, const user, which will have a name of roadside coder and an age property. Now, how do you actually go on to access the value inside an object? So first let me run this file over here. So open with live server. Yeah, just like that. And if you go to inspect, now if we go on and console log, let's say if I want to print my name, so user.name. So with this we should be able to access the property. Yep, that's cool. But what if we want to modify this name property? We can simply go on and say user.name equals just like that. And if we now go to print this, or let's print the complete object, you're gonna see the name property has been modified over here. But what if we want to delete any property? Let's say if we want to delete user.age. So we'll just write delete user.age, and now you can see our object only has a name property. So yeah, this is how you go on to access, modify and delete properties inside of an object. Now there can be an interview question that can be formed on this delete keyword. So interviewer can give you a question like this, where we have a iffy over here. By the way, if you don't know what iffies are, you can go on and watch my video on functions. So we have a iffy over here which is being called, and we are supplying 5 value to the params. And over here we are deleting a and then returning a. We're simply printing that func variable over here. So what do you think is going to be the output for this? A lot of people will think that okay, we're using delete a over here, so we're gonna delete this 5 value from this variable and we're gonna return undefined or null or something like that, right? But no, that will not be the case, because a is a local variable. Delete keyword is only used when we want to delete properties from an object and not a local variable. So this will not affect a at all, and it's gonna return 5 to the output. So if you go on to the browser, you're gonna see we get 5 as the output. Now coming back to our original object, what if we want to add a property like this with spaces in between it? How do we add this property? And let's say we give this value of true or something like that. So how do we add this property? To add this property, we need to keep it inside double quotes. Now this will act as a key. Now we can go on and access this key. So how do we access this? We cannot just simply write it like this, right? So there's another way to access properties inside of an object. We can use these square brackets and write this property or key's name inside of the square brackets. And now if we go on and see, yep, we get this output as true. So we're able to access this property right over here. And similarly, the way we are accessing this property, we can also go on and delete this property just like that. And if we go on and print this, yep, you're gonna see that property has been deleted now. Awesome. So actually there's one more thing before we move on to interview questions, and that is how do you add dynamic values, dynamic key value pairs to an object? So let me just remove this, for example, or let me remove the complete object. And let's say we have 2 variables over here. First property, which should be the name of the key. So let's say first name, and then we have another variable called name, which will have another value, which is going to be the value of this particular key. So how do we go on and dynamically add it like this? First name should be, how do we go on and add this? So a lot of people will think that, okay, we can take this property over here and we can add just like this, and we can take this name over here and add it like this. So let's go on and see the output. What do we get? Okay, so we get this output. We have property equals to Piyush Agarwal. So this is working fine, but what about this? This should be first name since it has the value first name. So to add dynamic properties like this, we just need to simply wrap it inside of a square bracket. And now you're gonna see we have first name over here. So now simply we can go on and access it like this, user.firstname. And yep, this works absolutely fine. Awesome. Okay, now let's say we have an object over here and we want to loop through each of its keys and print the values or even the name of the keys. So how do we do this? We cannot just use normal loop like we do in array. So we can use a for in loop. We can say for and key, or you can give this any name. And we can say in and name of the object, user. And inside this, I'm gonna move this console log. And let's just simply print this key for now. And inside of the browser, we can see we get all of the 3 keys of our object. And what if we want to access the values inside of this key? So what we can do is simply, we can say user and add key over here. And this is going to print our values. Awesome. So this is how you go on and iterate through an object. This can be asked during your interviews as well. Interviewer can test you by asking you this question if you're aware of such techniques or not. Alright, now let's go on and discuss some of the frequently asked JavaScript interview questions on objects. So the first question is right here. What will be the output of this? So a lot of people, when they see this, they think, oh, this is easy. This is just going to be this object in the output. But let's go on and see what the actual output is. So we have A3 and B2. But what about the third one? We had A1 as well, right? So a lot of people fail to notice this, but there are 2 keys with the same name. So other key with the same name which was added later is going to be considered while printing this. So if you have 2 keys with the same name, the first key will be replaced and it will still be in the first position with the last specified value. So another question is this. We have been given this object nums over here with properties A, B and title. And we have to create a function multiply by 2 which takes an object that multiplies all the numeric properties values of nums by 2. That is all of these properties which has number in it. We need to multiply it by 2. So let's see how we can do that. We can write a function called multiply by 2. Oops, this is multiply numeric. This should be multiply by 2 over here. And inside this is going to take an object. And as you already know, we have discussed how do you loop through the object. We use a for in loop. So for key in obj. And inside this, we can perform the action that we need to. So we're going to check the type of the current key. So type of, and how do you access the value inside of the key? We type obj and inside the square brackets, we type key. So if the type of key is equals to number, then we're going to do something. And what are we supposed to do? We are supposed to multiply it by 2. So we're going to say obj of key is going to be obj of key multiply by 2. Or it can also be written like this. So A was 100 and B was 200. And now when we go on to print this nums, and oops, here as well it's going to be nums. So this should be multiplied by 2, that is 200, and this should be 4. So let's see, we got the expected output. Okay, so let's move on to our third question, which is one of the most important question of this video. This question is asked a lot in JavaScript interviews. So let's understand what's going on over here. Interviewer has given us this code and he's asking what's the output of the following code. So over here we have 3 objects and we're assigning B as a key to A and we're providing it some value. And we're assigning C as a key to A and we're providing it some value. Okay, fine. And now we're gonna go and console log A. So we're accessing B inside of the A. So okay, fine. Most people will think that okay, we assigned it 123. So output is obviously going to be 123. So let's see. But the output is 456. Why? Why did this happen? Okay, so before understanding that, let me do one thing. I'm gonna comment this out. And let's simply print A. And what do we have over here? We don't have B as a key nor C as a key. We just have one key, which is object. What is this? So when we try to assign B to A as a key, what happens over here is basically this is assigned just like this, because obviously this object cannot be converted into a key unless it's a string. So when it tries to convert it into a string, it becomes object. So basically both of these act as this key right over here. So that's why when we first try to assign it, it is assigned 123 and then it overlaps it with 456. That's why when we go on and output this, we get 456 as an output. Now the next interview question is, what is json.stringify and json.parse? So let's say we have an object over here, const user, name to be, let's say Piyush, and age to be, let's say 24. Fine. Now, how do you convert this object into a string? So if we try to console log and say user, this would normally print the object over here. Fine. But if we want to convert this into a string, we use json.stringify and wrap this into it. And now if you go on, yep, you see we have got this object as a string over here. Cool. Now let me try to assign it to a variable, const strobj, let's say. And if we print this is obviously going to be absolutely the same thing, just like that. But how do we convert it back to an object which we can interact with? Because obviously we cannot object the keys right now, right? So if we go and try to do name, this is gonna throw us undefined because obviously we cannot access the keys right now. So to convert it back to an object, what we can do is we can say json.parse and we can put it inside of there. And now you're gonna see we got our object back. Yep. Now then a follow-up question to this can be, interviewer can ask, where can you use these things? How are these useful? So the most common use case for this is storing it in our local storage. So when we say local storage dot set item and we set this inside of our local storage. So let me go on to the browser and let me open something. Let's see this website, right? We can go to inspect and we can go to applications, and inside of here we have local storage, right? And inside of this you can see we have a key value pair with value being an object inside of a stringify format, because we cannot directly store the objects inside of our local storage. So this is how you do it. So what you can do, you can simply go on and show it to the interviewer by local storage dot set item to be, let's say, test. This is going to be a key and value is going to be strobj. Oh, this is going to be inside of a. So here you can see key is test and the value is this object right here. But what if we try to assign the object directly? It's gonna give us this object that we discussed already, that when it tries to convert object to string forcefully, it gets converted into object. Cool. Now we can simply access this local storage and we can simply console log it, local storage.getItem, and provide the key. And then you're gonna see we get this object over here, but we don't want that. We want this strobj. So yep, we got that. And now if we go on and say json.parse, so wrap this whole thing in json.parse, we're gonna get this object back. So yeah, this is the use case for json.stringify and json.parse. If you want me to make a complete video on this local storage, session storage, etc., just let me know in the comments down below. I'll make a complete video on this topic and what are the different types of interview questions that are asked on these topics as well, these local storage, session storage, and cookies, etc. topics as well. Alright, now the next question is, what is going to be the output for this statement right here? So if you don't know, this 3 dot operator is called a spread operator, and it basically is used to spread the properties of an object or of an array. But over here we got a string inside of this array. So when we try to use this spread operator right over here, what it's gonna do is it's gonna spread all of these characters inside of this array. So if we go on and see the browser, yep, we can see that it has spread all of these characters of the string inside of this array. We're going to discuss more about this spread operator as we go along in this video. Now similarly, we have another question on the spread operator. We have been given this user object and this admin object, and we have to tell what is going to be the output for this. So we're spreading this user object inside of this admin object. So what it's going to do is it's going to add all of these properties of this object inside of this object right here. So when we print admin, you're going to see that we have admin true, age 21, name Lydia. So we got all of the properties of user inside of the admin as well. So this is pretty convenient. An interviewer can give you questions like this to understand if you have knowledge of basic spread operators or rest operators or not. Okay, now the next output based question is on json.stringify again. We have been given an object over here, and inside this we're saying json.stringify, and we're providing the settings over here to stringify it basically, but we have been provided this array over here with level and health. So what will this do? So when we provide these two keys inside of this square bracket, what this will basically do is it's gonna only stringify level and health, or those particular properties. So if we go on and console log this and go to the browser, you're gonna see it has only stringified both of those properties, and it has completely ignored this username property. Now the next output based question is this. We have been provided an object shape over here with radius 10 and a normal function diameter and an arrow function perimeter, and we're saying shape dot, and we're calling both of them basically right over here. So if you don't know, I've discussed how arrow functions and normal function perform inside of an object in my functions video, so you can go and watch that video, but I'm gonna explain you here as well. So when you call this function, it's gonna reference to this object right here. But when you call the arrow function, it's gonna reference to the window object. So a lot of candidates make this mistake over here. They think that both of them are functions, so they're simply going to give the normal output. So for this, let's say 10 into 2 is going to be 20, and for this, you can say 2 into mass.py into 20. So this is not going to be calculated obviously, because this dot radius does not exist, because this is being pointed to the window object, and this is going to be not a number, NaN. So if we go, yep, you see, not a number and 20 output. Also, don't worry if you don't have any knowledge about this keyword right here. I'm going to create a video on it very soon. So subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss that video. So yeah, in interviews, we should closely pay attention if this is a normal function or if it's an arrow function, because this can change our output drastically. All right, pause. If you're not yet following me on Twitter, go to twitter.com/Piyush_Eon or click the link in the description down below and hit that follow button right now. I'm waiting for you. I'm still waiting. Okay, fine. Let's continue with the video. Alright, so the next output based question can be, what is destructuring in objects? So basically destructuring means taking out the specific properties of an object like this. So we can say const curly braces equals user, and let's say if we want this name property, so we can write this name property inside this curly braces, and this is what destructuring is. So we can go on and console log name over here, and you're gonna see we get this output. So this is what basically the destructuring is all about. And now another follow-up question on this can be, how do you go on and rename this destructured value? Let's say we have another variable name over here. Right, so this will create a problem for us because both of these variables have the same name. So if you go to browser, we're gonna get this error that identifier name has already been declared. So how do you go on and rename this? We can simply put comma over here and say my name, or any name that you want to give it, just like that, and we're gonna get the output again. Awesome. Now coming back to destructuring can be performed in nested ways as well. So let's say if we have an object full name over here, and inside this we have another object with first name and last name. Right, so let's say if I want to take this full name out of it like that, so obviously this is going to print an object right now. But what if we want to take out this first from it as well? So we can simply say colon, and don't mistake it with renaming. While renaming, we just simply write the name over here. But while further destructuring, we write these curly braces and we destructure, let's say, first from inside of it. And now we can simply write first over here, and you're gonna see we get this output Piyush. So we have nested objects over here, and we did some nested destructuring over here as well. Okay, so the next output based question can be this. We have been provided a function get items over here with fruit list and some rest parameter with args and favorite fruit, and we have to return all of these things. So if we call this function with banana and apples, and then we're simply calling this function just like this. But there's a problem over here. As we can see, our IDE has provided us this error. A rest parameter must be last in the parameters list. So these rest parameters can't exist in the middle. They are always supposed to be the last of these parameters. So interviewer can give you questions like this to confuse you, to see if you are actually aware of the rules that are in JavaScript for these rest parameters and spread operators. But for spread operators, that is not the case. Spread operators can be used in between. So if we go on and print this, So obviously we're gonna have to console log this. Yeah, like that. Yep, like that. So we got banana, apple, orange and pear. Okay, so now let's discuss some questions on object referencing, which is again one of the most important questions that can be asked in JavaScript interviews. So basically we have been given an object over here called C, and we've declared another variable called D, and we're assigning C to D. And then what we're saying is we're changing the greetings key to hello, and we're gonna go and print d.greeting. So what most people think is, okay, fine, we have changed C over here, but we are printing d.greeting. So obviously D was given the value of C earlier, which should again be hey. So output should be this, right? This should be the output, right? But that's not going to be the case. So if you go and see the browser, we get hello. So what happens is when we try to assign one object to another, we are not copying all of the properties of one object to the other variable. What we do is we just simply provide the reference to this object to this variable right here. So if we go on and change anything in D or C, it will affect both of the object because we're simply providing the reference and not the complete object. Now similarly, we can have another question on this where we are given two console logs. First is this object and another is this object. So what do you think is going to be the output for both of these? It is going to be false for both of them because both of them are different objects over here. Both have different space in the memory. And objects are only equal when they're referencing a particular area in the memory. So over here, this is an independent object and this is an independent object. So it doesn't matter if you're comparing it strictly or not strictly. It is always going to give us false because both of these are going to point to a different memory space. Now another question on object referencing can be this right over here. So we have a person object with this name property. We have another variable called members and we have an array inside of which we're providing a value of person. Okay, fine. And then we're setting person to null and then we're console logging members. So what do you think is going to be the output? Based on what we've discussed up until now, you might think that, okay, we're setting person to null, then this should also be null, right? Nope, we got the output of this array with name Lydia. So why did this happen? So if you think about it, when we provided this person value to this members array, what we're doing is we're basically providing this person to members 0th index. So this will not affect this place over here since we are modifying the complete variable and not the properties inside of it. But what if we were supposed to do this? Person.name equals null. Then this will actually go on and affect this. So if we go on and see the output, yep, we see name equals null. So yeah, you should be aware of all of these things when it comes to object referencing. Now the next output based question is this. We have been provided a value object over here and we have been provided a multiply function which takes this value object, which basically spreads this object over here inside of this x variable, and then we are console logging x.number into 2. Okay, fine. So first time this multiply function will run, what's gonna happen is x have been provided this value. So this value will be taken from over here. Since this is the default value and we're not sending anything from here, so this is obviously going to be taken from over here. So this number is 10. Okay, fine. And since we are doing this spread operator over here, what this will do is this will not give it the reference to this original object. This will simply clone the object over here, which we'll discuss in just a minute, that how we can go on and clone objects. So this has cloned this object, number equals 10 and number into 2 is going to give us 20. Simply in the second call as well, this is going to give us 20. But in the third call, what's going on? We're passing this value right here. This direct object into this multiplier. So in this case, this will not take this default value. It will not take this default value. It will simply take this value over here and it will have the reference to that value. So now when we say x.number into 2, this will print 20. But now what has happened is it has modified this number inside of this object. So the next time that we call this value with this is going to print 40 because this number has been modified to 20 since we directly passed this value inside this params. So let's see the output. 20, 20, 20, 40. So yep, that is how it's done. Okay, so in this question, we've been provided a function called change age and reference, and we're passing an object inside of it. Okay, and then we're provided an object over here. And then we are assigning this person obj2 to change agent reference, and we're passing person obj1, and then we are printing both of those over here. Okay, so fine, let's see what's happening. So inside this person obj2, we have this function, we're passing person obj1. So when it goes inside of this right over here, this person variable has the reference to this person obj1, which has the properties name and age. So here we're setting person.age to 25. So this will obviously modify this 30 to 25. And then we are reassigning this person variable over here to some other object. So as we discussed already, since we are reassigning this will not affect the reference. And we're simply returning the person. So what is going to be the output over here? I think the output is going to be name Alex and age 25. And for this one, person obj2, this is going to be the output. So let's see if we're correct or not. Yep, we have name Alex 25 age, and we have name John with age of 50. So again, you need to properly see the question and understand what's going on inside of it. Don't just simply think that since we are assigning an object some value which has the reference to some other object, it's gonna get modified. But no, since we are reassigning the complete object, it's not going to be modified. So let's move on to our next question. So the next question is, what is shallow copy and what is a deep copy of an object? So in theory, shallow copy basically means when we copy an object to another object, but that particular object, the other object has still got the reference to at least some of the properties of the original object. So when one object holds the reference to another object, this is called a shallow copy. But when we completely clone an object into another variable, that is called a deep copy. So we don't have any references to the original object, and that is why it is called a deep copy. But then there can be another follow-up question to this question. How can you go on and create a deep copy of an object, or how to clone an object? So let's say again we have this user object over here, and we're gonna go on and console log this user object. And now if you want to clone this, there can actually be a lot of ways to do it, but I'm gonna tell you the 3 most popular ways to do it. So let's say const obj clone, and we're gonna say object dot assign. And we're gonna take inside of these brackets, we have a target. So let's say our target is an empty object, and we want to copy this object inside of this empty object, and then assign it to this obj clone. So now if we go on and do this, yep, you see over here. But let's say if I try to do obj clone dot name equals Piyush, and you're gonna see this will not affect the original object. Yep, you see, these both are completely different objects. Now, the other way to do this can be this. We can stringify the object user, and then we can parse it, json.parse, like that. And now if we go on and reassign the name and see the output, still made a deep copy of this object. Let me tell you another way, which can simply be what we have already discussed. We can destructure user object right over here. So yeah, that works great. So awesome. These were all of the interview questions that are very frequently asked in these JavaScript interviews when it comes to objects. So if you like this video, give this video a huge fat thumbs up, and to access the other video of this JavaScript interview series, you can click the link in the description below, or you can check out the link in the I button above.